Hi, I'm Hippie Dad. Welcome to Cloud A. Alright, so anyone who's been watching me would realize by now that I'm a very serious advocate for electronic cigarettes. I think they're awesome. I think people who are current smokers should use them, should definitely quit smoking analog cigarettes and move over to electronic. I don't think that just anybody should just start picking up electronic cigarettes, especially if you're either a minor or you've never been addicted to cigarettes. Then you don't need it. There's no need. This is just for us because we're condemned and this is the best we can do. So I want to make a point that if anybody wants to do any of the things that I do on my channel, I recommend that you don't, because most of the stuff is very dangerous, and if you do decide to do some of the things that I do, then you do it at your own risk and expecting the potential that you could get hurt. So be very careful. Now the first most important thing, and it's pretty much the entire topic, but batteries. Outside of the potential danger of chemicals or whatever, I think the most primary danger involved in electronic cigarettes is the batteries. Some of the possible problems that you can get into is charging the batteries. I left out an E. Being aware of the voltage, which can mean overcharging, overdraining, and you need to be aware of the temperature. When we think of electronic cigarettes, usually we think of something that looks like this, or maybe something like this, or some sort of a mechanical mod. Either way, they all, deep down inside, use either some kind of custom built-in lithium polymer battery, which in the case of this, you can't replace the battery, it's rechargeable, so it's a proprietary battery in there. Or usually something to the form of this. Ultimately, they're all the same type of battery. The chemistry is the same. They're lithium polymer batteries that can deliver a very, very high load of amperage at any given time. I believe this is a Samsung one, which does like something like 35 amps, and this one does 35 amps. So, you know, if you know anything about electricity, then you know that that's quite a bit of power. Well, sorry, not power, but current at any given time. So most of the time, folks that are going to visit my channel are probably interested in getting into mechanical mods. They want to do the cloud chasing or whatever it is that they're into, and I support all of that as long as you do it safely. So if you check out this video and learn from it, then hopefully you shouldn't get hurt, but again, I don't recommend you do anything I do. If you're just using a mechanical mod, it might be kind of hard to be able to tell what the voltage is, because there's no mechanism for that. So usually when you've been doing it for a while, like the rest of us, it starts to become second nature. You can kind of feel it. You can tell when it's starting to drag along, and I pretty much pull them out at about 3.3, 3.2 volts every single time. So if you're going to be going right into mechanical mods, then you're going to want to go easy on it until you get, you know, the feel of it. If you aren't using a mechanical mod, maybe you're going to invest some money in a regulated box mod. I don't have any new ones, this is an older one, but this guy will actually have built-in temperature warnings. You know, it'll cut off before it can get too hot. It'll cut off before you hold down the button for too long. It has a voltage meter on it, all sorts of different stuff that helps you absolutely make sure that you don't screw up. And then it's your own fault if you do, with all that kind of technology in there. And a lot of the newer regulated and unregulated box mods for rebuildable dripping atomizers and rebuildable tanks and whatever, they have that kind of stuff built in too usually. Maybe not the regulated or the unregulated ones, but the regulated box mods for sure. Most batteries for electronic cigarettes come in the form of 18mm diameter, or I don't have one with me, but I have the mod that takes it a 26mm diameter, which these aren't too popular, but I feel like they're going to start to pick up their game a little bit. Anyway, so this is an 18650. This is one of the most common batteries you're going to find. It's 18 millimeters in diameter and 650 millimeters in length. So what makes these batteries so dangerous? Well, it's because they are very unstable. To be able to deliver the amount of current that they do, there's a trade-off, and that is just a very unstable battery, but they're some of the most powerful batteries there are for a short period of time. So basically these batteries want very badly to blow up, and it's your job to do everything in your might to make sure that it's satisfied and happy and doesn't blow up. I can't stress that enough, because either by charging it, you can charge it for too long and overcharge it. You can wait till it's overdrained to where it's below the safe threshold of how much voltage should be in it. So both of those variables of voltage are important, because they're made to be only within a given range of voltages. So usually it's something like 3.2 to 4.2 volts. That's pretty much the range that people usually talk about. I try not to go to 3.2 or lower, but that's when you know you definitely want to get it out of there and start charging it. Now, another thing is the temperature. Batteries are going to get hot while you're using them and while they're charging, and so it's very important that when you go to charge them, if you just pulled it out of your mod, you give it a good cool down period, so that way it doesn't get too hot, because it's going to start to heat up, and if it's already hot and then you start heating it up more, you're likely to put yourself in a situation where you might have a catastrophic failure. So you have to be aware of the rotation of them. So what I usually do is every time I take one out, I'll set it off in the back behind my charger, and I'll grab a fresh one off the front that's been sitting and waiting for a while and had time to cool down. Usually about 30 minutes is what I would say is the amount of time you want it to cool down before and after charging. So if you end up building up a big enough supply of these, which most people do, then you can kind of get that sort of rotation going on. Okay, so charging is a very important topic, right? So it's, you know, probably half of your battery care. So it's very important that you get a decent charger. You want one, hopefully, that has some kind of protection built in to prevent it from overcharging or getting too hot or whatever, but you know, I wouldn't always judge that, and definitely don't want to charge them when you're nowhere in the vicinity where you can be able to have a look and, you know, feel it every once in a while. Or if you invest a little bit of money, about 50 bucks I think is what it costs, to get yourself a decent little charger. This one, which you probably will eventually want to, is made by eFest, which is a pretty big name in, I guess, like cheap Chinese batteries for lithium polymer batteries, which they're not a bad company. I've had a lot of their equipment and it all seems to work pretty well, so it's not that big of a deal. I don't have the power cable with me, but it has a button. So what this does is it allows you to select between 3 modes: half an amp, 1 amp, and 2 amps. The 2 amp charge, I would definitely not want to leave it alone, because it's going to charge really fast at 2 amps, and it only allows you to use 2 ports, the 2 middle ports here, for a good reason, because you can't get all that power if you distribute it among all 4 of these. These universal chargers accept batteries anywhere from 18340, which I've never seen one, but I'm sure there's use for them, all the way up to 26650, which is what this guy takes. And one of the most important things, the reason I like this charger particularly, is because it has these little digital gauges on it that tell you, it gives you a visual display of how much charge is left in your battery, and it also tells you the voltage and readout. So that really helps you in your efforts to prevent overcharging. Okay, there's just a little bit more to be aware of. One thing you can definitely tell with your mod by just feeling it is the temperature of the mod. So there's a couple different places where things will have a temperature that you can definitely notice, and so it's good to know what that temperature means. So if the atomizer gets hot, that's okay, because that's what's supposed to get hot. That's where the coils are, they're going to heat up, and that's what's supposed to get hot. So not to be worried if your atomizer is hot. If your mod is hot, that might not necessarily be a bad sign. It's more than likely going to happen. It's part of the design for it to get hot, so that way the battery is displacing its heat into the mod, which you want, so that way the battery keeps cool and doesn't blow up. The button, if the button gets hot, I've heard people say that it's not a big deal, but if you understand what's going on to make the button hot, it means that there's basically arcing going on between the two contacts in the button that touch. And if that's happening, it could mean that there's a lot of gunge on one of the contacts, and that could be a problem. It could cause the battery to get too hot. It could, you could just not be vaping very happily because you're not getting a lot of current through the mod, and so you're thinking everything sucks and you're about to go back to buying cigarettes. So try to do some maintenance and clean out the threads and clean out all the little contacts and everything that touches, because that matters. And you know, most of these things are like pure copper and that corrodes. Another important point is if you're going to be building rebuildable atomizers or, you know, drippers or tanks or whatever, it's important to have a good resistance meter. This is not one that I recommend, this is just the one that I have, and it's actually out of spec a little bit, I think. So if anybody knows a better one, I'd like to know, please let me know. But it's important that you know what you're building, what resistance you're building, because if you build too low and you don't know how to handle it or care for it without it, you know, going ballistic, then you have a problem. So definitely, usually if you build 0.5 or above, you're in a good safe range. That way it's not likely to ever go catastrophic. And if you want to start building into the lower ranges, I don't recommend it, but 0.5 and below, you definitely want to have an accurate meter that's going to be able to tell you what you're building for safety. Some of these batteries have a little printed circuit board on either end, which usually will be a protection circuit. I don't know offhand which ones of mine have it anymore. Sometimes it says on them, and if you're concerned about having a battery go south, then it's very important that you maybe look for batteries that have that. If you go to your local vapor shop, ask the guy that works there, he'll probably know which ones are protected or not. And obviously with the non-protected ones, you can end up with a lot more vapor and thicker clouds. If you're absolutely concerned about safety and you're brand new, I would say definitely get some protected battery. Also, if you end up with a damaged battery, that can be a problem. You might not notice it at first, but like for instance, I have one here that has a ripped insulator, so that can be a problem. I've had it happen with a few different batteries where you end up having a short. I've since come up with a really cool battery case, which I'll probably show in a future video that helps prevent anything from shorting out on one another. If you have little nicks in your plastic, it's probably time to dispose of them, and pretty sure there is a proper way to dispose of these. You don't want to just throw them out like alkaline batteries, but I'll get back on that when I find out for sure. So that's about all I got right now. If I come up with any other important points, I will make an additional video with a part 2. For now, safe Vapely. Peace.